All right, hello again. We're going to return back to Evelyn Underhill, Mysticism, studying the nature of and development of your spiritual consciousness. My name is Dr. Cheryl Meyer, and I came out here in nature. I just ran here and hiked here. So, all right. Welcome. You can start here if you'd like, or go back to some of the other chapters before this, but it's fine. Just start. I'm always like, just start where you are. I have an idea, this came to you for a reason. And so just trust that. And welcome. The last one I did was in Northern California, in San Francisco, and this one I'm back in Southern California. There's the ocean, I'll show you. Between that canyon over there. There. Wait, yeah, there on the camera. So, I had this all situated so we can watch the sunset. There we go. So I just didn't see this anywhere on the internet, and it's a book from she wrote it in 1910 or so, and it was published in 1911. It's Evelyn Underhill, and we're on chapter 3, which is great. I just looked at the title. It's called Mysticism and Psychology. And let me show you the top so that if you want to take a screenshot of this part, because this is what's covered in this chapter right here. I'll read it, but it's great. And I am a psychologist for the past over 20 years. And I went to 9 years of school before that. So I might say some things if it's going to make it any clearer as a psychologist. So chapter 3, Mysticism and Psychology. In this chapter, she's going to talk about man's craving to know more and love more. His mental machinery, emotion, intellect, will, their demand of absolute objects, cognation and cognition, action and thought, importance of emotion, love and will, concentration, contemplation, the mystic sense, its liberation, passivity, the mystic state, supraliminal and subliminal personality, the quote, ground of the soul, the subconscious mind, extravagances of this doctrine, the subconscious not the equivalent of the transcendental self. Yes, that's very important. Mystical theory of man's spiritual sense, the new birth, the spiritual self, synteresis, the spark of the soul, the organ of transcendental consciousness, transcendental feeling, its expression. The spark of the soul sleeps in normal men. The mystic's business is to wake it. Wow, I can't wait to read this. She said the spark of the soul sleeps in normal men. The mystic's business is to wake it. Function of contemplation. It alters the field of consciousness, dual personality, the hidden self of the mystic, its emergence, entrancement, mystical ill health, psychophysical phenomena, mysticism and hysteria, mysticism and longevity, the mystic's psychic peculiarities, their wholeness of life, genius and mysticism compared, philo on inspiration, the function of passivity, automatic states, summary and conclusion. Yes, I am so excited for this. And I want to tell you this past week, since almost a full week, I've been reading, I've been listening to, there's lots of different recordings on LibriVox and everything of Evelyn Underhill's. I totally recommend this for everybody, is on her book, Interior Castle. It's not a long book, but she talks about how to enter into the soul and how she saw God like a diamond, like a sun in the middle of a crystal, in the middle of a diamond in our soul, like a castle, a crystal castle. In the innermost chamber is God, like a sun. But she said most people, and this is what lots of mystics and a lot of psychologists and everyone says, that 95%, and I've heard myself in person, Eckhart Tolle say this, the guy that wrote The Power of Now, like 90 to 95% of people haven't woken up this part of themselves. And how Teresa of Avila says, or Avila, she says, is most people are living on the outside of the castle in the courtyard. They're not even entering in. They're hanging out with the reptiles, that she saw a bunch of reptiles outside the castle and just following their reptilian brain, you know, of pleasure and avoiding pain and whatever else that is. And so I can't wait to see what Evelyn Underhill teaches us, because it sounds so similar to what's in that short book of Teresa of Avila's. Even though it's short, it's very, very dense. Anyway, I recommend that book fully. All right. Oh, good. Back on the sun. I might move to my phone instead of moving my holder. Okay. Here we go. We come now to consider the mental apparatus which is at the disposal of the self, to ask what it can tell us of the method by which she can escape from the prison of the sense world, transcend its rhythm, and attain knowledge of or conscious contact with reality. We have seen the normal self close, shut within the prison of the senses, and making, by the help of science and of philosophy, a survey of the premises and furniture, testing the thickness of the walls, and speculating on the possibility of trustworthy news from without, penetrating to her cell. Shut with her in that cell, two forces, the desire to know more and the desire to love more, are ceaselessly at work. There's a really good song by a band called Everything But the Girl, and she just sings like, I just wanna love more. I mean, most songs are about that, but that's what she's saying the whole song. It's really beautiful. I wanna love more. Anyway. Where the first of these cravings predominates, we call the result a philosophical or scientific temperament. Where it is overpowered by the ardor of unsatisfied love, the self's reaction upon things becomes poetic, artistic, and characteristically, though not always explicitly, religious. We have seen further that a certain number of persons declare that they have escaped from this prison. Have they done so? It can only be in order to satisfy these two hungry desires, for these and these only make that a prison, which might otherwise be a comfortable hotel. And since these desires are in all of us, active or latent in varying degrees, it is clearly worthwhile to discover, if we can, the weak points in the walls and that method of attack which is calculated to take advantage of this one possible way of escape. Before we attempt to define in psychological language the way in which the mystic slips the fetters of sense, sets out upon his journey towards home, it seems desirable to examine the machinery which is at the disposal of the normal conscious self. I was praying on the way up here. I'm like, come on, will you please let the sun out? I'm not saying the divine love did it for me and for us, but we'll take it, right? Perhaps it did happen for us. See if I can. All right. You guys know from the other videos, it's better for me just leave this alone. It's so bright on me. All right. I always just wish I could teleport you all here. It's so amazing, but I'll do my best by getting it on camera. Since these desires are in all of us, active or latent in varying degrees, it is clearly worthwhile to discover, if we can, the weak point in the walls, and that method of attack which is calculated to take advantage of this one possible way of escape. Before we attempt to define in psychological language the way in which the mystic slips the fetters of sense, sets out upon his journey toward home, it seems desirable to examine the machinery which is at the disposal of the normal, conscious self, the creature, or part of a creature, which we recognize as, quote, ourselves. Psychologists are accustomed to tell us that the messages from without awaken in that self three main forms of activity. One, they arouse in her movements of attraction or repulsion, of desire or distaste, which vary in intensity from the semi-conscious cravings of the hungry infant to the passions of the lover, artist, or fanatic. Two, they stimulate in her a sort of digestive process in which she combines and cogitates upon the material presented to her, finally absorbing a certain number of the resulting concepts and making them part of herself or of her world. And three, the movements of desire or the action of reason, or both in varying combinations, awaken in her a determination by which precept and concept issue in action, bodily, mental, or spiritual. Hence, we can say that the main aspects of the self are emotion, intellect, and will, and that the nature of the individual is emotional, intellectual, or volitional, according to whether feeling, thought, or will assumes the reins, right? So it's important. Maurice Nicole talks about, and Gurdjieff talks about different centers in yourself, emotional centers, instinctive centers, and spiritual and the like. And so they all present themselves as I. You know, they say they are your I. And so it's important for you to understand, to know which center in you is trying to take the rein, or is it this wounded inner child, this inner child of yourself that becomes entitled from the wounds, you know, until you integrate that self and let go of the pain and do the forgiveness and all the inner work, or just know yourself as soul. That cuts through a lot of the work. You know, Eckhart Tolle talks about how it gets so painful sometimes that sometimes people's egotisms are just burned off really quick, and sometimes it takes people a long time to stop identifying with your egotism. But we'll find out more about it. I'll let the book speak for itself as much as I can today. I just feel like doing that for a change. There. Thanks to the watertight compartment system of popular psychology, we are apt to personify these qualities, thinking of them as sitting like Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos within the mind and spinning the flax of experience into the thread of life. But these three words do not define three separate and mutually exclusive things, rather a trinity in unity, three aspects, methods, or moments of the same thing, the conscious self's reaction on her universe. Now, the unsatisfied self in her emotional aspect wants, as we have said, to love more. Her curious intellect wants to know more. Both appetites are aware that they are being kept on a low diet, that there really is more to love and more to know somewhere in the mysterious world without. One other side comment is, I've been meditating this whole week on like one line for an hour, whatever. I'm not trying to just say, but of I think it's 1 Corinthians 13 or 2nd, but it's the love chapter. Love is patient, love is kind. And so today was like, well, yesterday was we know in part, and we prophesy in part, and we speak in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will be done away, you know. But love remains in all of that. This word love, agape, this God love, everything comes out of that, and that stays. But I was just contemplating that idea of we know only partially. And so, it just helped. It helped me. That's why I'm sharing it with you. It helped me with this voracious longing to always know more and love more. And it was just like I could relax and know that, it's okay. While we're here in duality, while we're here in this world, we're not going to know all of it. We're not going to prophesy all of it. We're not going to see all of it. We only see in parts, but it's still important to see that part, see all the parts that we can, I think. That's why we're reading this book. But anyway, I'll go on. But I recommend that too, contemplating, really taking the time to meditate on this love that comes from the divine. But that's what we're doing in this anyway. So, oh look, my bookmark. It's like this 3-dimensional rose. It's mystic as well. Rise, open your soul eyes. That's what rose means to me. And more. Both appetites that are aware that they are being kept on a low diet, that there really is more to love and more to know somewhere in the mysterious world without. They know too that their own powers of affection and understanding are worthy of some greater and more durable objective than that provided by the illusions of sense. Urged, therefore, by the cravings of feeling or of thought, consciousness is always trying to run out to the encounter of the absolute, and always being forced to return. The neat philosophical system, the diagrams of science, the sunset touch are tried in turn. Art and life, the accidents of our humanity, all foster an emotional outlook, till the moment in which the neglected intellect arises and pronounces such an outlook as to have no validity. Metaphysics and science seem to offer to the intellect an open window towards truth, till the heart looks out and declares this landscape to be a chill desert in which she can find no nourishment. These diverse aspects of things must be either fused or transcended if the whole self is to be satisfied, for the reality which she seeks has got to meet both claims and pay in full. When Dionysus and Areopagite divided those angels who stand nearest God into the seraphs who are aflame with perfect love and the cherubs who are filled with perfect knowledge, he only gave expression to the two most intense aspirations of the human soul and described under an image the unattainable conditions of her bliss. Now, there is a sense in which it may be said that the desire of knowledge is a department of the desire of perfect love. Since one aspect of that primal, all-inclusive passion is clearly a longing to know, in the deepest, fullest, closest sense, the thing adored, love's characteristic activity. For love, with a capital L, she has it, love's characteristic activity. For love, all wings, is inherently active, and cannot be lazy, as the mystics say, is a quest, an outgoing towards an object desired, which only when possessed will be fully known, and only when fully known can be perfectly adored. Intimate communion, no less than worship, is of its essence. Joyous fruition is its proper end. This is true of all love's quests, whether the beloved be human or divine, the bride, the grail, the mystic rose. I had no idea she'd say that. I haven't read ahead. The plenitude of God. But there is no sense in which it can be said that the desire of love is merely a department of the desire of perfect knowledge. But there is no sense in which it can be said that the desire of love is merely a department of the desire of perfect knowledge. I see. So perfect knowledge is within the state of wanting perfect love, but perfect knowledge doesn't necessarily include perfect love. For that strictly intellectual ambition includes no adoration, no self-spending, no reciprocity of feeling between knower and known. Mere knowledge, taken alone, is a matter of receiving, not of acting, of eyes, not wings, a dead, alive business at the best. There is thus a sharp distinction to be drawn between these two great expressions of life, the energetic love, the passive knowledge. One is related to the eager, outgoing activity, the dynamic impulse to do somewhat, physical, mental, or spiritual, which is inherent in all living things, and which psychologists call caunation. The other to the indwelling consciousness, the passive knowing, somewhat, which they call cognition. To go back to our original diagram, caunation is almost wholly the business of will, but of will stimulated by emotion, for willful action of every kind, however intellectual it may seem, is always the result of feeling. I remember in reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, he was saying, if you have a thought of what you're really wanting and a feeling or a bodily feeling, he said something about trust the feeling. It's like trusting your intuition more than just your intellect. Like some deeper part of you has a knowing. Let's see if you're getting this some. I think so. All right. We act because we want to. Our impulse to do is a synthesis of determination and desire. All man's achievements are the result of caunation, never of mere thought. Quote, "The intellect by itself moves nothing," end quote, said Aristotle, and modern psychology has but affirmed this law. Hence, his quest of reality is never undertaken, though it may be greatly assisted by the intellectual aspect of his consciousness, for the reasoning powers as such have little initiative. Their province is analytic, not exploratory. They stay at home, dissecting and arranging matter that comes to hand, and do not adventure beyond their own region in search of food. Thought does not penetrate far into an object in which the self feels no interest, i.e. towards which she does not experience a cognitive movement of attraction, of desire, for interest is the only method known to us of arousing the will and securing the fixity of attention necessary to any intellectual process. None think for long about anything for which they do not care. That is to say, which does not touch some aspect of their emotional life. They may hate it, love it, fear it, want it, but they must have some feeling about it. Feeling is the tentacle we stretch out to the world of things. Here the lesson of psychology is the same as that which Dante brought back from his pilgrimage, the supreme importance and harmonious movement of il desiro and il vil, V-E-L-L-E. My Italian's not so buona. Buonanotte. Si come rota. Anyway, I can't even say this. Che angularmente amasa. These move together. She doesn't translate them anyway. These move together to fulfill the cosmic plan. She's British, so they know French and Italian and stuff. I only studied Spanish and some French and Greek and Hebrew. Anyway, there's a bunch of crows. They'll come across, I think. Look at this. They're all turning. I hope that got on the camera. I always point my camera to the birds and it usually doesn't often show up. All right. These movements together to fulfill the cosmic plan. In all human life, insofar as it is not merely a condition of passive awareness, the law which he found implicit in the universe is the law of the individual mind. Not logic, not, quote, common sense, but el amor che move il sol alle autres stelles is the motive force of the spirit of man. Well, we know that the love of something. Here, I'm going to put this here. So if anyone knows Italian, it's this paragraph right here. Please put it in the comments so that we can all learn by it. These phrases. If there's any more on this page, feel free. I can show this because I have a 100-year-old book right here. I got an old one. And that way we can all help each other, because otherwise, if I didn't choose to start reading this, we wouldn't have this book being read to us. As far as I know, I couldn't find it anywhere. And I didn't want to just read it for myself. Okay, so it'd be great to know what's the motive force of the spirit of man, the one force in Italian, in the inventors, the philosophers, and the artists, no less than in the heroes and in the saints. The love of something is the only stele. I don't know what S-T-L-L-E is. If I do look it up, and I'll put it in the comments as well. The vindication of the importance of feeling in our life, and in particular its primacy over reason in all that has to do with man's contact with the transcendental world, has been one of the chief works of recent psychology. Especially in the sphere of religion, it has come to be acknowledged that God known of the heart is a better and more valid statement of ultimate experience than God guessed at by the brain. Amen to that. Hope you got that. That the active adventure of the spirit is more fruitful and more trustworthy than the dialectic proof. One by one, the commonplaces of mysticism are being thus rediscovered by official science and given their proper place in the psychology of the spiritual life. The steady growth of vitalistic theories of existence, with their tendency to emphasize the purely departmental and utilitarian nature of the intellect, and interpret everything in terms of vitality, assists this process. You know, vitality, your life. Thus, Leuba has not hesitated to say, L-E-U-B-A, has not hesitated to say that, quote, more life, a larger, richer, more satisfying life, is in the last analysis the end of religion. That's so great. That's what Jesus said. He says, I came to give you life, zoe in Greek, abundant life, life more abundantly, like vibrance, true life, awakeness, so that you're not in the outer court of this castle. You're not living on your subconscious and programming and mechanical. You're actually alive, making real choices. There's people on the path. I hate moving my phone right now, but I'm just going to show you. It's so awesome, the view of the path right now. If I could zoom in, there's people on that. It's just beautiful here. All right. More life, a larger, richer, more satisfying life, is in the last analysis the end of religion. The word religion, it has a bad name these days, but it really means, I heard, I forgot his name. I can see Ted Nottingham say that the word religion means relinking. I think it was Ted Nottingham. He teaches about Aramaic and mysticism and Maurice Nicole and stuff. Larger, richer, more satisfying life. Okay, so, and we have seen that life as we know it appears to be far more tightly bound up with will and feeling than we thought. That which our religious and ethical teachers were wont to call mere emotion is now acknowledged to be of the primal stuff of consciousness. Thought is but its servant, a skilled and often arrogant servant, with a constant tendency to usurpation. Of course, the brain always wants dominance, it wants to take control, but it's so small. Our brain is so small compared to our consciousness and us as souls, and the vibrancy of our life and our ability to see things and comprehend. It's so beyond our little brain. But our brain, if we go in egotism, it just wants to dominate. It's just like a weed wants to grow. You don't have to be mad about it. It just wants to, and it's just like not letting that spoiled inner child of you, run your life. But your soul, your heart, your mind, your will, all of these combined in whatever state. I know that Evelyn Underhill will help us understand that. Thought is but its servant, a skilled and often arrogant servant, with a constant tendency to usurpation. At bottom, then, we shall find in emotion the power which drives the mental machinery, a power as strong as steam, though as evanescent, unless it be put to work. Evanescent. Without it, the will would be dormant, and the intellect lapse into a calculating machine. We're not computers. As for its transitoriness, incessant change has been defined by Bergson as a necessary condition of consciousness, indeed of life. Further, the heart has its reasons which the mind knows not of. We've heard that lots. That's a quote. Further quote, the heart has its reasons which the mind knows not of. That's in The Cloud of Unknowing. I just was reading that. Oh, and I forgot, Evelyn Underhill wrote the preface to the copy that I have of The Cloud of Unknowing. You go into this place above your intellect, into this cloud of unknowing, and you sit there. It's I do recommend that book as well for some. You'll know if you read it why you got to it. Anyway. I hope there's something moving for you guys. I mean, the sun is moving slowly there. The heart has its reasons which the mind knows not of. It is a matter of experience that in our moments of deep emotion, transitory though they may be. I'm not sure if that is from The Cloud of Unknowing. That's the second footnote, so we'll see. It is a matter of experience that in our moments of deep emotion, transitory though they may be, we plunge deeper into the reality of things than we can hope to do in hours of the most brilliant argument. At the touch of passion, doors fly open which logic has battered on in vain. I know that. For passion rouses to activity not merely the mind, but the whole vitality of man. It is the lover, the poet, the mourner, the convert, who shares for a moment the mystic's privilege of lifting that veil of Isis which science handles so helplessly, leaving only her dirty finger marks behind. The heart, eager and restless, goes out into the unknown and brings home literally and actually fresh food for thought. Hence, those who feel to think are likely to possess a richer, more real, if less orderly, experience than those who think to feel. This psychological law, easily proved in regard to earthly matters, holds good also upon the supersensual plane. It was expressed once for all by one of the earliest of English mystics when he said of God, quote, "By love he may be gotten and holden, but by thought of understanding never." That's from The Cloud of Unknowing. The first thing which enlightens our eyes, said Ruysbroek, is the vivid emotion which floods and irradiates consciousness when it receives a message from the spiritual world. Okay, the first thing which enlightens our eyes, says Ruysbroek, is the vivid emotion which floods and irradiates consciousness when it receives a message from the spiritual world. This exalted feeling, this desire, not the neat deduction of logic, the apologist proofs, or the existence of the absolute, unseals the eyes to things unseen before. He continues, of this abrupt emotion is born from the side of man the second point, that is to say, a concentration of all the interior and exterior forces in the unity of spirit and in the bonds of love. That's from the prayer book. Let's see what she puts. Maybe they put it in, she's Anglican, Le Ornament des Gnosis Spiritualis, maybe translated by Mater Link. Anyway, I can't even. Anyway, I know I've seen it in the 1928 prayer book. Anyway, of this abrupt emotion is born from the side of man the second point, that is to say, a concentration of all the interior and exterior forces in the unity of the spirit and in the bonds of love. Hence, we see emotion as its proper work, as the spring and stimulant of action, the movement of desire passing over at once into the act of concentration, the gathering up of all the powers of the self into a state of determined attention, which is but the business of the will. Now this act of perfect concentration, the passionate focusing on the self upon one point, the passionate focusing of the self upon one point, when it is applied in the unity of the spirit and the bonds of love to real and transcendental things, constitutes, in the technical language of mysticism, the state of meditation or recollection, a condition which is peculiarly characteristic of the mystical consciousness, and is the necessary prelude of pure contemplation, that state in which the mystic enters into communion with reality. I'm going to read that part again. Now this act of perfect concentration, the passionate focusing of the self upon one point, when it is applied in, quote, the unity of the spirit and the bonds of love, end quote, to real and transcendental things, constitutes, in the technical language of mysticism, the state of meditation or recollection, a condition which is peculiarly characteristic of the mystical consciousness and is the necessary prelude of pure contemplation, that state in which the mystic enters into communion with reality. Now, I can say this another way so you can understand what she's talking about, because I saw it this morning. I got in my YouTube feed a recommendation for this video. I don't think I'll link it because I think most people wouldn't get it. It would seem very, very odd to them. But I loved it, and people in the comments were loving it. And she had just posted it like 12 hours ago. So she just made it, you know, before I did this, right? And so what this woman did, she's a type of modern mystic, you know, because it says in the end, visions and prophecies will be poured out among the young and all people, but whatever. She was in Walmart, and she was just in a meditative state, and she showed all of these books in an order, you know, in the book section, and like Ajax Cleaner, or all these things, all these advertisements, but they were all conveying mystical messages, and it wasn't just made up. It totally followed a sense. I could totally, completely follow her. It was beautiful and magical, and she called it like a poem of the Holy Spirit. And I could see what she was saying, and it went just along. It's just like what I see in songs. I see an ego path and a soul path, because when you develop eyes to see that, or when it's developed in you through pain or whatever way God has led you on your path, you have certain gifts given to you and eyes that see certain things. Anyway, that's how, what she's saying, when your love and your passion come together, and your will and want to serve people and love, then you see this in reality, in normal life, what other people don't see. They just see signs and commercials and the like. Let me see if I get this back on the sun. There. The sun's about to set over the little mountain over there. There's the ocean is right there. Yeah. Oh, it's so vast and expansive. I want to get more of the sky, I think. There. My tripod's about to tip though. There. Don't worry about it though. Okay. It's just important for people, all of us are in different stages of understanding this. So people that don't have an understanding, I want you to know what this looks like. You can just hear a song when you're at a diner, or you get, we all have a guardian angel. You just get mystical, you get intuitive nudges all the time. But unless you exercise those gifts, if you exercise that muscle, it's just like if I have arms, but I never do push-ups, I never develop that muscle that I have on my arm, But because I do them every day, or 6 days a week usually, I haven't done yet today, but you develop muscles. It's the same with your intuition. If you don't use it, then you lose it. It's just there, dormant, not being used. I was just telling one of my clients this past week, I was just like, every amount of inner work you have done helps all of humanity, all of love grow in consciousness, in love to everybody. We have then arrived so far in our description of the mechanism of the mystic. Possessed like other men of powers of feeling, thought, and will, it is essential that his love, or hers, and his determination, even more than his thought, should be set upon transcendent reality. He must feel a strong emotional attraction toward the supersensual object with a capital O, of his quest, that love which scholastic philosophy defined as the force, like Star Wars, or power which causes every creature to follow out of the trend of its own nature. Of this must be born the will to attain communion with that absolute object. This will, this burning and active desire, must crystallize into and express itself by that definite and conscious concentration of the whole self upon the object, which precedes the contemplative state. We see already how far astray are those who look upon the mystical temperament as passive in type. Our next concern then would seem to be with this condition of contemplation, what it does and whither it leads, what is its psychological explanation, and A, its psychological explanation, and B, its empirical value. Now, in dealing with this and other rare mental conditions, we are, of course, trying to describe from without that which can only adequately be described from within, which is as much as to say that only mystics can really write about mysticism. Fortunately, many mystics have so written, and we, from their experiences and from the exploration of psychology upon another plane, are able to make certain elementary deductions. Oh, I'm just so moved. It just came to my heart that I have the cloud of unknowing because of Evelyn Underhill, because of her doing this work. And I have this other book called Matilda Madberg that you said, it says you have to read it 9 times in order to get it. That was translated by Evelyn Underhill. I didn't know, and I read it all last year. I read the whole thing. It was hard to get through. But I didn't realize I had these books because of the efforts of Evelyn Underhill. And we have this because she chose to take the time to write all of this for us and combine it all and put it all together. I don't know, I'm just so touched by the love. Anyway, he continues, of this abrupt emotion is born from the side of man the second point, that is to say, a concentration of all the interior and exterior forces in the unity of the spirit. Oh, sorry, I already read that. Sorry, I got carried away. Okay, so Fortunately, many mystics have so written, and we, from their experiences and from the exploration of psychology upon another plane, are able to make certain elementary deductions. It appears generally from these that the act of contemplation is for the mystic a psychic gateway, a method of going from one state of consciousness to another. In technical language, it is the condition under which he shifts his field of perception and obtains his characteristic outlook on the universe. That there is such a characteristic outlook, peculiar to no creed or race, is proved by the history of mysticism, which demonstrates plainly enough that there is developed in some men or women, another sort of consciousness, another sense, beyond those normal qualities of the self we have discussed. This sense has attachments at each point to emotion, to intellect, and to will. I want to watch this last bit of the sun popping down. I want to look up myself. Oh, I wish I had the whole panorama for you. I'll go. Once the sun goes, I'll show you all the way around. So this was making me think of, let me put the bookmark where we are. There's still, I'm going to read more as I can, but of the I took all these Native American wilderness classes. Okay, here we go. There's the trail. There's the ocean and the sunset. And here's the canyon. All the way back around. And the sky, look at the sky. It's just so beautiful. I think I'll sit this here for now. So I took these Native American wilderness survival classes, and they taught me how to overlay looking in the spiritual realm and looking in the physical realm at the same time. I don't know if I'll ever teach that. I think I've hinted at it, deep within some of my old videos. But I'm just really cautious because I want to always create videos that are safe for all people. Because I got into a lot of some weirdness, but I was brought back, thank God. Thank God. I didn't ever mean to. I never meant to. But you know how they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I never wanted to. I just wanted to know more love and more knowledge. But sometimes different aspects of yourself will try to dominate. Oh, we'll get a little bit of both. So, in technical language, it is a condition under which she shifts her field of perception and obtains her characteristic outlook of the universe. That there is such a characteristic outlook, peculiar to no creed or race, is proved. That's why I was thinking of that, because I'm part Native American, and I was taught. We see the Asian people in the East, and the people of India, and the people all over, the Irish, the Celtic, people all over the world. Obviously, we're all made in the image and likeness of God. We have this capacity in us to see with our mystic eyes, with this sixth sense, whatever you want to call it. We have the five senses, and then this other, developing your intuition. The sense beyond those normal qualities of the self which we have discussed. This sense has attachments at each point to emotion, to intellect, and to the will. It can express itself under each of these aspects, which these terms connote. Yet it differs from and transcends the emotional, intellectual, and volitional life of ordinary men. It was recognized by Plato as that consciousness which could apprehend the real world of the ideas. Plato talks about the ideas and that this world is like a shadow. C.S. Lewis talks about it. We're in the shadowlands. That's the real. And it is kind of like we're in the cave, and we're content to just look at the fire, the shadows on the wall of the cave, instead of go out into the real world. And I heard this morning, in this morning prayer meeting that I was in, on a type of Zoom thing, that it was like he reminded us, no, seek first that kingdom. Seek that kingdom over the kingdom of this world, this earth. Remember to seek that kingdom. And every morning it's like I forget, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. And it was just like 12 hours before that I was reminded of that. And our minds are so quick to go back to our five senses and the brain and just relying on that, because that's just low default. But you're worth so much more. You're worth your higher mind being active and alive. You're worth the abundant life. That's why you're here. This wouldn't have come to you unless part of your soul knew that and was yearning for that. Because I know mine is, and that's why I'm giving it. I'm called to. I'm being obedient to. It's not like it's easy sometimes, but it's so, you get so rewarded by just the love of just doing this with no outcome in mind. It's like there's like 300 followers that I have right now on YouTube, and who knows where otherwise, but everyone that's meant to be getting this is getting this, and everyone that's meant to get this in the future will do so. But you can do your part by sharing this to people. You really can. I'm not just saying that to grow my channel. I'm saying it's up to you to do your part where you're called. God is the one who promotes. I trust that. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's just us. Welcome. I welcome you. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you came. All right, I'll just keep reading. That's my plan. This sense has attachments at each point to emotion, to intellect, and to will. It can express itself under each of these aspects, which terms connote. Yet it differs from and transcends the emotional, intellectual, and volitional life of ordinary man. It was recognized by Plato as that consciousness which could apprehend the real world of the ideas. Its development is the final object of that education which his, quote, Republic, in the book, Plato's Republic, describes. It is called by Plotinus another intellect, different from that which reasons and is denominated rational. Its business, he says, is the perception of the supersensual, or in Neoplatonic language, the intelligible world. It is the sense which, in the words of Theological Germanica, I forgot who wrote that, has the power of seeing into eternity, the mysterious eye of the soul, which by St. Augustine saw the light that never changes. The Smiths sing a song like that. It goes, there is a light and it never goes out. I love that part of the song. I would just listen to that part over and over and over again. Take me out tonight. Take me anywhere. I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. Driving in my car, I never want to go home because I haven't got one. That's the mystic. Artists and musicians go into this realm whether they know it or not, and they bring back the ideas that Plato are talking about from the heavenly realms. Pavel Florensky has a beautiful quote that I often quote that describes what they're doing. That's why. And the Beatles have it in one of their songs. But I have a whole playlist about longing for home songs. This is your longing for your soul's home. Anyway, the light that never changes. It is, says Al-Ghazali, a Persian mystic of the 11th century. Oh, I love the Persian mystics like Rumi, Well, he wasn't Persian. It's close, though. He says, quote, like an immediate perception, as if one touched its object with one's hand. In the words of his great Christian successor, Saint Bernard, quote, it may be defined as the soul's true, unerring intuition, the unhesitating apprehension of truth, which, quote, simple vision of truth, says St. Thomas Aquinas, ends in a movement of desire. It is infused with burning love, for it seems to its possessors to be primarily a movement of the heart, with intellectual subtlety, for its ardor is wholly spent upon the most sublime object of thought, with unflinching will. For its adventures are undertaken in the teeth of the natural doubts, prejudices, languors, and self-indulgence of man. These adventures, looked upon by those who stay at home as a form of the higher laziness, are in reality the last and most arduous labors which humanity is called to perform. These adventurers, looked upon by those who stay at home as a form of the higher laziness, are in reality the last and most arduous labors which humanity is called to perform. They are the only known methods by which we can come into conscious possession of all our powers, and rising from the lower to the higher levels of consciousness, become aware of that larger life in which we are immersed, attain communion with the transcendent personality in whom that life is resumed. Look, if we didn't have someone telling us that they witnessed Jesus walking on water and performing miracles, and I met a person who actually saw someone performing miracles and straightening out the legs of people, and having x-rays before and after, and this kind of stuff. I didn't meet that man, but I've seen videos of him teaching, His name is Teacher in Greek, if you want to search out who I'm talking about. I'll just briefly, but then we wouldn't reach for these places, but that we hear that even with our mind, then we know, it's not just for Jesus, because Peter said, Lord, if that's you, then let me walk out to you onto the sea. There's the ocean right there, right? And he said, come, and he started coming. And so we can go to these places. We're called to go to these places. Not all people are meant to be mystics, but we're called. And if it's your calling, then do so. And I hope this encourages you. I'm going to go for a couple more minutes because I make these for 1 hour. But I like getting back while it's still a little light, because I have to run back now so that the coyotes don't get me. Oh, there's a biker. So I know he's on the path not far ahead of me. That larger life in which we are immersed, attain communion with the transcendent personality with a capital P, in whom that life is resumed. Mary has chosen the better, not the idler part. I was going to say, I was just reading a book this past week by Henry Nouwen. I forgot what it's called, but it's for a class I'm in. And he described Mary and Martha. Mary is the one that sat by Jesus' feet. Martha was the one that was cooking and saying, hey, can you tell Mary to get up and help me in the kitchen? And Jesus said to her, Mary has chosen the better thing, and it will not be taken from her. In that moment, Mary knew Jesus wasn't on earth for long. She sat by him and listened to him at his feet, to learn of this man of love, of healing, of highest consciousness that came here, that wanted to teach us so much how to wake up to this abundant life. But would we have him or would we not have him? He described it like the Japanese, the yin and the yang, the action and the passivity. And sometimes, when you're active, there's the passivity inside, and when you're inactive, there's still the action inside. The action is born out of deep contemplation, or I wouldn't be able to speak these things. But if I hadn't taken the action of going to graduate school and getting my doctorate, I might not have been attracted to this book to teach us either, to read to us, Mary has chosen the better, not the idler part. In vain does sardonic common sense, confronted with the contemplative type, in vain does sardonic common sense, confronted with the contemplative type, reiterate the sneer of Mucius, in Corsant el Herix, que la pauvre I don't know what this word is. Martha face la cuisine. Okay, so Martha is busy with the cuisine. Sometimes I just get an intuitive knowing of what this sentence is. The words are in another language. My intuition shows me, because our intuition is above all language, so it can. So don't limit. Don't limit. All things are possible with God. When you connect to your God self, we think Google is like this amazing thing, but you can look up anything in your intuition and just be quiet. I've done this in my nature wilderness survival stuff. So anyway, it remains a paradox of the mystics that the passivity at which they appear to aim is really a state of the most intense activity, more that where it is wholly absent, no great creative action can take place. More that where it is wholly absent, no great creative action can take place. In it, the superficial self compels itself to be still in order that it may liberate another, more deep-seated power, which is, in the ecstasy of the contemplative genius, raised to the highest pitch of efficiency. This restful laboring, says Walter Hilton, is far from fleshly idleness and from blind security. It is full of spiritual working, but it is called rest, for that grace looseth the heavy yoke of fleshly love from the soul, and maketh it mighty and free through the gift of spiritual love, for to work gladly, softly, and delectably. Ellipsis. Therefore it is called an holy idleness, and a rest most busy, and so it is in regard of stillness from the great crying of the beastly noise of fleshly desires. All right, I'll end there. Walter Hilton's book's called The Scale of Perfection. Anyway, I haven't heard of that one yet. Oh, that's the Beatles song. I kept trying to think of, can you take me back where I came from? Can you take me back? I better not sing it because their copyright laws are very stringent. Hopefully, Morrissey of the Smiths doesn't mind that I attempted to sing a song without practicing on my guitar or anything, but just so we could get into that mystic state. You know, I have lots of songs on my YouTube channel and skating as well, because it gets you in the flow, it gets you in the mystic states. So I have this and everyone's like, why do you have this variation? Not everyone, like the 3 people maybe that, whatever. It's because it helps us feel that place, be in that place. If you haven't gone there, it gives you a taste of it, so that you know and you want it for yourself and you go find it for yourself. Can you take me back where I came from? And Tolkien, the name he wanted to call The Hobbit, and he has it in the subtitle still, he got that kept in, is there and back again. And I listened to this beautiful lecture at Cambridge when I was there with the C.S. Lewis Foundation at Oxbridge or something. This guy talked about piano playing and how you start in one home and you venture out and then you return to this home in the song. And that's like the parallel of our spiritual life. Oh, there's the moon. There's a sliver of the moon right there. That's it. So we got the sun and the moon. We got the sun in the morning and the moon at night. It's a song from camp. All right. I know I'm like in the Sound of Music right now. You know, when they're in Salzburg or you're having their picnic and they're like, can we do this every day? You know, can we have this last forever? That's what state I'm in right now. I wish you so much love. Thanks for sharing this beautiful moment with me and entering this book with me. I hope to continue. I plan to. Much love.